I still remember the burning sensation in my throat that day when my mother, Helen Morgan, was arranging flowers in the living room, glanced over at me, and said in a voice as light as air, "Layla, why can't you learn to be a little more graceful, like Emily?" I stood there holding the certificate I had just received for winning third place in the statewide high school graphic design competition, feeling as if someone had dropped me into a tub of ice water. The paper still smelled like fresh ink, but she didn't look at it once. My name is Layla Morgan. I'm 32, born and raised in the suburbs of Aurora, Colorado. We lived in a two-story house with a gray roof, a neatly trimmed lawn my father maintained with the precision of a tailor, and a row of lavender bushes along the white fence that my mother treated like a sacred ritual. On the surface, everything looked polished, tidy, perfect, but inside, I learned early on that I was never the center of that home. My sister, Emily Morgan, 3 years younger than me, was called our little sunshine from the moment she was born. She had crystal blue eyes and a smile so sweet my mother often described it as springtime in a child's face. I had darker hair, a tall, skinny frame, usually buried in sketchbooks, my hands stained with ink, always muttering ideas to myself. I used to believe that effort was enough. I was wrong. I remember my 13th birthday, the age when people start craving to be seen. I got a small vanilla cake from the store with exactly 6 random candles because they forgot to buy the number ones. My mom set it on the kitchen counter, sighed, and went back to her phone call. No happy birthday song. No candles lit. 1 week later, for Emily's birthday, the backyard was filled with balloons. She wore a princess dress, and someone in a full Elsa costume showed up to perform. My mom stood there filming everything like it was a historic moment. After Emily's party, as I was cleaning up in the kitchen, I asked, "Mom, why don't I ever get parties like that for my birthday?" She didn't look up. Her voice floated out like breeze through sheer curtains. "You don't need those things, Layla. You've always been strong and independent." Was that supposed to make me feel appreciated? I tried to believe it. But later, when I won a statewide STEM scholarship, when I represented my school at a research summit in D.C., when I graduated summa cum laude, my mother only smiled and said, "Good job. Just don't brag too much, okay? Your sister's still struggling with biology." But when Emily managed to get a B in math, a big win for someone who'd been in tutoring all year, there were cakes, hugs, and a fancy dinner at Mom's favorite Italian restaurant. Each time it happened, I told myself, "It's fine. I don't need recognition. I'm doing this for me." But being left behind isn't a vague feeling. It's visible sharp, like the night I walked into the dining room and saw the whole family planning a trip to Miami, and no one had thought to ask me. "Layla, do you want to come too?" Mom asked, like she'd just noticed I was there. I swallowed hard. "I've got work that week." "Well, that's actually perfect," she said, not hiding her relief. "Fewer people makes it easier to plan." I never got to be the first choice. To my parents, I was the life raft, always there to carry the weight, to be the strong one, but never the child who needed care. I remember when Emily got into a minor car accident and scraped her knee, my mom cried for 3 hours in the hospital. I once broke my arm falling down the school stairs and had to call a friend to take me to urgent care. When I got home, my mom said, falling downstairs, "You really need to be more careful. People will think you're clumsy." I gave a half laugh. That hurt more than the bone fracture. Still, I kept trying. I studied, I worked, I grew. I graduated college with dual honors degrees, entered the marketing industry, and worked my way up to a senior management position by 30. I lived alone in a small apartment downtown Denver, paid off my student loans, and managed my own finances. Emily, on the other hand, still lived with our parents, changed jobs every few months, and spent money like life was a slot machine. When I got my third promotion at the firm, I called home to share the news. My dad said, "That's good," then handed the phone to Mom. Emily just passed her yoga instructor certification. She squealed, We're all going out this weekend to celebrate. I nodded, though all I heard was an echo of silence inside me. Back then, I didn't realize being left out of dinners and decisions wasn't the end, it was the beginning. After years of holding the foundation together, I'd soon find myself locked out of the house entirely. The gate code changed, and a message would arrive on my phone: "We no longer trust you." That would be the day everything collapsed. But it would also be the day I started saving myself. I got the call on a gloomy Friday afternoon, still holding a cup of coffee in the office elevator. The caller was my father, Peter Morgan, a man who once carried himself like he belonged on a talk show set, always polished, silver hair always combed. Now his voice was hoarse and heavy. "Layla, could you come by the house for a bit? Your mom just found some papers from the bank." "About the house," I said, sure, and hung up. That evening, I drove to the old house in the Aurora suburbs, the one my grandparents, James and Marilyn, left behind. They were the only people in the family who truly saw me for who I was, without comparison. They passed less than a year apart. Unlike the usual inheritance route, they had the house put under a shared family trust split between me, Emily, and our parents. At the time, I felt quietly validated. I didn't know then it would be the source of everything that followed. My parents greeted me with tired faces. On the dining table sat a pile of bank documents and a red envelope from the mortgage company. My mom, Helen, pointed to the bold print, "Delinquent payment notice, foreclosure warning." It looks like we've missed 3 mortgage payments," my dad said, avoiding eye contact. "What happened?" I asked, voice low. He took a breath and sank into a chair. "Ever since I retired, the finances have been tight. Your mom used most of our savings helping Emily pay off her credit cards. Then he lost his job. Jeremy lost his job in the summer. Why didn't you tell me earlier?" I snapped. "We didn't want to burden you." "You've been so busy," my mother added, trying to soften the tension. I glanced around the living room, the old portrait of my grandparents above the fireplace, the bamboo clock frozen at the wrong time, the dark curtains my grandma had picked out. This house had been a home to me, even if it always felt borrowed. I couldn't just watch it disappear. "How much is the monthly payment?" I asked, already knowing this was a one-way decision. My dad handed me a sheet. "It's $5,200 a month. If we don't pay within the next 30 days, they'll start foreclosure proceedings." I nodded, jaw tight. "I'll cover it. But this is temporary. You need to find a long-term solution." My mother started crying. My father placed a hand on my shoulder, nodding without a word, as if I had stepped into some nameless hero role in a family crisis I was never truly part of. From that night on, I lived 2 separate lives. One in the city as a digital marketing director attending meetings that ran past 7 p.m. The other, quietly wiring $5,200 each month to a mortgage I didn't legally own, on a house I was never welcome to call mine. To keep up with that payment, I postponed my plan to buy an apartment in Capitol Hill, even after putting down a deposit. I turned down the company trip to Europe. I even took on an extra consulting project on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Dinners with friends became rare. On weekends, instead of morning coffee outings, I sat down to photograph receipts and email transfer confirmations to my parents, just another habit no one ever mentioned. Emily stayed the same. Still in her old bedroom, still ordering delivery food and complaining about how her job was too mentally exhausting. She had time to take pottery classes, cooking workshops, and even something called a cosmic energy alignment course I didn't bother asking about. Once, at a family dinner, I mentioned the $1 million ad campaign I had just closed with a tech firm in Seattle. My mom just looked up from her soup and said, "Don't talk about that in front of Emily, it makes her uncomfortable." I smiled bitterly and turned away to take a sip of water. Each passing week added another layer of dust on the original sense of sacrifice. No one asked if I was okay. No one said thank you. Everyone treated it like a responsibility I was born to carry. Samantha, my best friend, sat across from me at the caf, shaking her head as I talked. "Layla, You're carrying an entire family that refuses to grow up. You're burning yourself to keep warm people who never even try to light a match. I didn't answer, because deep down, I still believed in the idea that if I just did enough, they'd see me love me for who I truly was. I was wrong, and I'd soon pay the price for that belief. Sunday night. I brought a bottle of Italian wine and a box of tarts from Rose Hill Bakery, the kind Mom once complimented while we passed by, though she said it rather indifferently at the time. The house was quiet as usual, except for the low hum of the heater downstairs. Emily was already in the living room, scrolling through her phone, legs draped over the coffee table, her metallic nail polish catching the ceiling light. My mom was fussing in the kitchen, and my dad sat reading the newspaper as if everything was perfectly normal. I set the wine on the dining table. I hadn't even taken off my coat when Mom called out, "Oh, we have something to tell you tonight." A casual sentence, like a breeze before a storm. We sat down to eat, like always, her usual pot roast, toasted garlic baguette, and olive oil salad. My dad picked at the greens, tapped his glass, and smiled at Emily. "We've made a decision," he said. "Emily and Noah will be moving into the house." I put my spoon down, the sound hitting the plate loud and clear. "Moving in? What does that mean?" Mom explained in a syrupy tone. "Their lease at Westridge is ending soon. And this house is just too big for the two of us. Plus, if Emily lives nearby, it'll be easier when she has kids later." I looked at them one by one. None of them met my eyes. "Who exactly made this decision?" I asked. "We all agreed it makes sense," Dad replied, his eyes now a little evasive. "I'm still the one paying the mortgage every month over $5,000 each time. Or has everyone conveniently forgotten?" Emily shrugged. "You live downtown, not here. And it's not like you're short on money." I clenched my hands under the table. "You're right, I don't live here. Because I've been working non-stop to cover payments on this house. The same house you're now handing to Emily like a birthday gift." Mom frowned, placing a hand on Emily's shoulder as if protecting her from my gaze. "Don't be so dramatic, Layla. We're just making a little adjustment that makes sense. Besides, Emily's always been more attached to this place. She's loved it since she was a kid." I laughed. A dry sound, so unfamiliar it startled even me. "Loved this house? Loving it means standing by while I shoulder all the debt, then walking back in to collect the reward?" No one answered. Just the clinking of Emily's fork on her plate steady, like on purpose. I stood up and quietly grabbed my coat. My hand had barely touched the doorknob when Emily spoke. "You always act like the victim. Everyone has struggles, but you make it seem like you're some noble saint. It's exhausting." I turned around and looked at them all three with the same indifferent expression. "I'm exhausted, Emily. But not from sacrifice. From believing this family knew what fairness meant." Then I opened the door and walked out into the December cold, with no one seeing me off. That night, I came home, turned on the kitchen light, sat at the wooden chair without washing my face or changing clothes. My phone kept buzzing a text from Mom. "Don't be too upset. We can still talk things through." But no one had talked to me before they made the decision. I thought about the past 2 years, those nights sifting through bills, calculating down to the last dollar to stay ahead of the payment. The times I delayed contributions to my retirement fund just to keep that house from falling into foreclosure. It was all flaking paint, now peeling away to reveal a truth that stung. The next morning, I made the mortgage payment as usual. But something inside me had shifted. They didn't need me at the dinner table. They only needed my money each month. A week later, Mom texted to say Emily and Noah had moved in. They took my old room. I didn't respond. I just sat there staring at the transfer confirmation email, wondering, am I paying for someone else to live in the home I once belonged to, or funding a betrayal wrapped in the word family? And somewhere inside me, a door began to close quietly while outside, winter stretched on. The message came on a Tuesday morning while I was brewing coffee, preparing for a strategy meeting with a client. My phone lit up with a familiar name, Mom. Beneath it, a short message sharp as a blade. "We've changed all the locks and the gate code." Emily said she saw you driving around the house last night. She felt threatened. Please respect the family's decision. We no longer feel safe. My hand gripped the ceramic mug so tightly the handle cracked. I hadn't driven anywhere near that neighborhood. I'd been working late all week, never left downtown. It was a blatant lie. I sank into a chair, my back against the cold refrigerator, eyes glued to the message. They hadn't just changed the locks on a house I'd already paid nearly $130,000, for they'd made up a baseless excuse to cut me out completely. No warning, no conversation. Just severed me like removing an unwanted tumor. I dialed Samantha. They changed the locks, I said when she answered. Your parents? Her voice was full of disbelief. Yeah. Mom just texted. Said Emily saw me driving around, so they feel threatened. What the hell? Layla, you need to stop. Right now. I bit my lip, silent for a few seconds. Do you think I should stop paying? Not just think. I'm certain. Samantha's voice turned sharp. You're throwing money into a place where they not only don't appreciate you, but made up a lie just to cut you out. If you keep going, you're destroying yourself. I hung up, opened my laptop, and logged into my bank account. My cursor hovered over the scheduled payment section, the mortgage for the house at 19 Sycamore Street. The same house where I once hung a Christmas wreath in 9th grade, practiced speeches in front of the mirror in the living room, and slept under the stairs with a fever no one noticed. I clicked Cancel Scheduled Payment. A confirmation box popped up. My heart pounded. My index finger trembled. Then I pressed Confirm. Right after, I drafted an email to the bank, explaining I no longer owned or had access to the property and would not be responsible for any future payments. When I hit send, a hollow feeling swept over me, like cutting a cord that had held me for decades, but left a deep, slow, healing scar. 2 days passed in eerie silence. No texts, no calls. I imagined them popping champagne, thinking I had backed down or come to my senses. But on Friday morning, the phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Missed call from Emily. Then, a text. What are you trying to pull? The bank just called about a missed payment. Are you trying to blow everything up? Call me now. An hour later, it was my dad. Your behavior is unacceptable. You have a responsibility to this family. Call your mother immediately. And then came my mother's text, suddenly sweet, sweetheart. There's been a misunderstanding. We changed the locks because of a recent burglary in the neighborhood. Emily was scared, so I acted. You're always welcome here. But the bank won't wait long. You should reconsider the payment. I leaned back and laughed. A bitter sound, even to my own ears. No burglary happens that coincidentally. No, your welcome ever comes with accusations and eviction. When I didn't respond, the messages turned into blame. Then relatives started chiming in. Aunt Melinda from Wisconsin texted. I can't believe you treat your parents this way. They're getting older. Uncle Victor from Nebraska sent a voice message. Just because you make money doesn't mean you're above everyone. Family is about grace, not payback. Only Aunt Ruth, my dad's younger sister, sent this. What's going on, Layla? I've heard bits and pieces, but I don't understand. I'm here if you need to talk. I cried when I read her message. Because for once, someone wasn't assuming I was wrong, just because I stopped being silent. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the sofa, staring at the ceiling. A small part of me still waited for them to apologize, even just once. But no one did. The next day, I walked to the park across the street and sat next to an elderly woman feeding sparrows. I asked quietly, "Can I ask you something a little strange?" She turned to me, her eyes warm and bright. If someone treats you poorly but keeps saying it's out of love, how do you know what's real? She looked at me for a few seconds and then said, "Love without respect is just control dressed up nice. Don't let anyone drown you in the word family." I nodded, thanked her softly, and stood. My steps weren't any faster than usual, but something inside me had cracked and something else began to form. Something no one could bend, the resolve to walk away from the barbed wire loop they called love. 3 days after canceling the payment, I sat in my small 8th-floor apartment, looking out at a foggy Sloan Lake, feeling still. My phone remained silent, a silence that wasn't peaceful. I knew they hadn't realized what was coming. The next payment wasn't due for 3 more days. I spent that time preparing. I printed every statement from the past 2 years, over $5,000 a month, straight to the bank under Peter Morgan's name, my father. I highlighted texts where they promised to pay me back once things stabilize. I scanned every email, took screenshots of every transaction, and organized them into a folder titled Damage Records. Daniel came home at 6. He set the grocery bag on the counter, glanced at me, then at the stack of papers on the table. "You sure about this?" He asked, no judgment, just waiting. I nodded. "I'm done funding a house that locked me out." He said nothing more. He pulled out a chair beside me, opened the takeout container, and slid the garlic bread toward me. "They'll react," he said, calm and low. "Be ready." The next morning, my phone rang. The first text was from Emily. "You really think you're being clever? The bank just called. This house belongs to all of us, not your little mood swings." Then my mom, Layla, "I don't understand what's happening. Don't you see us as your family anymore? The bank is threatening to seize the house. Where are we supposed to go?" I didn't respond. I didn't call. By noon, my father left a nearly 3-minute voice message. His voice trembled, not from emotion, but from rage. "You're destroying everything. After all these years raising you, now you turn your back on your own blood? You want this house to collapse? You know what the bank's doing? They're posting seizure notices. You're really going to stand by and let that happen?" I put the phone down, exhaled. His words pierced, but they didn't hit bone this time. Samantha came over Saturday night with a bottle of red wine and a bag of almond cookies. "We're celebrating," she said, settling onto the sofa. "Because you finally chose yourself over the blood tape they've wrapped around your neck for 30+ years." I popped the cork, poured 2 glasses. My eyes caught the glow from the balcony lights. The city held its breath, and something in me began to feel lighter. "Didn't think it'd hurt this much," I murmured. "What did you expect?" she said. "Cutting a chain that's carved into your skin since childhood always leaves a scar." On Monday morning, the bank sent a formal notice, "Payment missed, overdue warning." I simply forwarded it to the family, with one sentence, "I am no longer responsible for this property. Please contact the legal owner for any further issues." 10 minutes later, Emily called. I didn't pick up. Then Mom called. I let it ring. Dad called. I switched my phone to airplane mode. That night, another message from Mom came in, just 2 words, "So cruel." I held my glass of water, staring at the words under the warm light. Had anyone ever asked how I felt being locked out? Being accused of making things up? Watching my room become Emily's new home without even being told? No one. Everyone only looked at the result that I stopped paying. No one bothered to look at the long trail of hurt that led me to that limit. 3 days later, Uncle Richard, my mom's younger brother, sent a message. "Your parents are panicking. They never thought you'd actually cut ties. If you want to talk, I'm here." I sat down and wrote him a full email detailing everything: money, denial, lies, false accusations, and the silence when I was pushed out of the very house I had held together with my own blood and sweat. At the end of the message, I wrote, "I'm not the traitor. I'm the victim who stopped staying silent." A week later, I got a message from Mom. This time, it felt heavier. "I read the email you sent to Uncle Richard. I need time to think. But I admit I haven't been fair. No matter what, I'm still your mother." I didn't reply right away. I let that feeling sink in, the feeling of someone who no longer had to forgive, didn't need to explain, and wasn't obligated to keep playing a rigged game called filial piety, where only one side ever loses. Day 18 passed in silence. Since I stopped the payments, my family seemed to shift from rage to confusion. I kept receiving emails from the bank with updates on the foreclosure process, The official notice was posted on the house in Aurora, stating, "Property will be seized unless the full debt is paid within 30 days." Aunt Ruth, the only one in my family still speaking to me, called late in the afternoon. "Your dad is desperate," her voice low. They both applied for refinancing, but got rejected. Credit scores too low. The bank won't take the risk. I leaned back against the chair and exhaled deeply. Did they mention anything about apologizing? A short pause. No. They said maybe you're overreacting. I pressed my lips together, thanked her, and hung up. The next morning, my phone rang while Daniel and I were having breakfast. He glanced at the screen. "Jeremy," he said, sliding the phone toward me. "I think you should take this to close it for good." I tapped answer. The voice on the other end wasn't hesitant or ashamed, just tired. "Layla, it's Jeremy. I know you're angry, but we need to talk." I stayed silent, letting the stillness wash over the line. He kept going. "The bank sent a notice. Things are bad. Emily and I were trying, but with what I make, it's just not doable. If you could cover for, say, another 6 months, we could buy some time, reapply, maybe qualify for a temporary loan. We can even write up a formal IOU if that helps." I placed the phone on the table and turned on speaker. Daniel looked up from his newspaper, quietly listening. I tilted my head slightly, voiced steady. "Jeremy, are you asking me to keep paying for a house I'm not allowed in, not listed on, was accused of spying on, and is now your home with your wife, the same woman who once called me selfish? Layla, don't be like this. Family is family. We help each other in hard times." I gave a cold laugh. "Helping is when someone's fallen, not when they've pushed you into the pit and now scream, 'Save me.' I know you're hurt, but this is our grandparents' house. You're really going to let it go?" I ended the call. Daniel's eyes met mine, full of quiet understanding. "They have no idea what your efforts were worth," he said. "All they see is that you stopped. They don't see how far you went to pull them up." That evening, my mom sent a long message. "Layla, you can hate me, be mad at Emily, but don't let that house disappear. It's your grandparents' legacy. It's where you grew up. You need to learn forgiveness." I read it and deleted the whole thing. Forgiveness doesn't mean blindness. I used to think holding on to the house meant holding on to part of my childhood. But I was wrong. No wall can contain memories that were never welcome. On day 23, the bank sent a notice to my inbox. Foreclosure proceedings will begin within 7 days unless emergency payment is made. I forwarded it to my family with a single sentence. "I'm not abandoning you. You were the ones who locked the door." An hour later, Emily messaged, same tone, no apology. "You always had to prove you were better than me. Well, are you happy now? Burning down this house, does that finally make you smile?" I flipped the phone face down and poured myself a glass of cold water. Her bitterness no longer pierced me like it used to. Instead, I felt relief, not having to pretend anymore. The truth is, I didn't need to win. I just needed to get free. Dad called at 9 p.m. Daniel was folding laundry. I put him on speaker. "Can you help us one last time?" His voice was hoarse. "Your mother hasn't slept in days. The bank sent someone to inspect. They're going to seal the property if we don't pay by this week. I'm begging you." I could hear Mom crying in the background. "We're still family, Layla. No matter what, we share the same blood. You can't just turn your back like this." I replied calmly. "I helped for 2 years, never missed a single payment. In return, I was locked out, lied about, and excluded from every decision. If you want to keep that house, pay for it with your own hands like I once did." I ended the call and sat down, eyes drifting toward the window. The streetlights outside cast a soft golden glow on the wet pavement. That house in Aurora was now just an address on paper, empty, cold, unfamiliar. What remained was a choice: hold onto something that never loved me back, or build a new space where I didn't have to beg for basic respect. The law office sat on the sixth floor of an old red brick building in downtown Denver. The air inside was bright, but so quiet that each keystroke echoed clearly. Amanda Shaw, the attorney Samantha had recommended, wore a pale blue blouse and thin-framed glasses. She sat across the glass table, flipping through the documents I brought like she was tracing a thread in a financial deception. After a few minutes, she folded a copy of the bank transfers and looked up. "Your name isn't on the deed. There's no loan agreement. But there's clear evidence of an implied arrangement between you and your parents," she said. I straightened my back, hands tightly clasped. "So, can they sue me?" Amanda shook her head. "No. These messages," she gestured to her iPad screen, "make it clear this was intended as temporary support. There's nothing to prove you committed to paying long-term. If they sue, they'll lose money and time without gaining anything." Something inside me unlatched, strangely weightless. Amanda printed a legal summary for me and added, "They might try to guilt you, but the decision is yours. You owe them nothing legally speaking." I left the office and stepped into the morning sun. The breeze carried the scent of coffee from the shop across the street. Freedom didn't need a celebration, just a printed page in black ink saying I was no longer bound. The following month, Daniel and I moved in together. The two-bedroom apartment in Wash Park had a small balcony overlooking maple trees turning color. Each morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting golden stripes across the living room rug. I began to sleep more deeply, eat better, and work without checking my bank account every 3 days. I opened a separate savings account called my Haven. Every transfer felt like laying a brick for a home no one could lock me out of again. No one could change the locks on without a word. Work started thriving too. My new proposal, an integrated campaign using AI to personalize user experience, got greenlit by the board after a 40-minute pitch. The following week, the department head called me in. "We're opening the content strategy lead position. 20% raise, more autonomy. Would you be interested?" I smiled and nodded. Very interested. That night, Daniel took me out to celebrate with fresh pasta at a cozy Italian spot in the old district. "You deserve everything you have," he said, eyes steady on mine. "Not because you carried so much, but because you knew when to let go." While I was building this new life, my family was sinking deeper into crisis. Aunt Ruth called on a quiet Saturday afternoon, her voice weighed down. "The bank officially seized the house. The notice went up yesterday. They have 2 weeks to move out." I leaned against the kitchen wall, tapping my fingers on the now cold tea mug. "I'm sorry to hear that. But I can't do anything more." "I understand." She paused briefly. "They still won't accept responsibility. Still think you're acting out of spite." I gave a small, dry laugh. "I'm not angry. I'm just too tired to be." According to her, my parents moved into an old 2-bedroom apartment on the north side of the city, more than a 40-minute drive from downtown. Emily and Jeremy rented a studio in Garden Crossing's thin walls. No in-unit washer. From leather couches and jet tubs, they'd gone to fold-out chairs and leaky faucets. A whole different world. Not long after, Emily posted online, "It's heartbreaking when the ones you trust are the very reason your family loses everything." I didn't react. I didn't delete the app either. Everyone's entitled to tell the story their way. As for me, I was living in the truth that I'd saved them once, and the second time, they were the ones who shoved me to the edge. The next Monday morning, I opened my inbox and saw the bank's subject line, "Property at 19 Sycamore has been fully repossessed." It was a strange moment. I didn't cry, didn't sigh. Just sat there, looking at the attached photo of the house with the yellow tape across the entrance. What was once my family's pride was now bank-owned property, a home without owners. I clicked Save Image, then closed my laptop. The tea was completely cold, but something inside me had begun to warm. Not from loss, but from finally being free of something that never chose me. The email arrived at noon while I was in the office, fresh from a meeting with the creative team. The subject line was brief, from Mom. I sat still for a few seconds, hand on the mouse. I opened it. Layla, this isn't easy to write. I've spent many nights thinking about everything that happened, about how we lost each other. I was wrong. Not just about the house. About how I failed to see you for so many years. I favored Emily. I covered things up, and I expected you to always be strong, without ever letting you be fragile. I'm sorry. The final lines were shorter. No guilt trips. No defenses. I don't expect forgiveness overnight. I only hope, if you're willing, that we can start again not as roles, but with respect. I read it again and again. Not angry. Not emotional. Just still. Part of me had long stopped expecting words like that. But now that they came, I didn't push them away. I printed the email, slid it into my notebook, and went back to work as if I hadn't just been touched in the deepest part of memory. 3 weeks later, I agreed to meet Mom at a cafe downtown, not near my apartment, not near hers either. She arrived early. Ash pink sweater, more silver in her dyed hair, and a face that looked grayer, as if even she no longer recognized the woman in the mirror each morning. She smiled when she saw me walk in, but didn't stand. We ordered herbal tea and chatted blandly about the weather, work, city news. It wasn't until our tea was halfway gone that she looked up. Are you happy? I paused for a few seconds. I'm learning how to feel more at peace. It's not always easy, but at least now I get to be myself. Mom nodded quietly, like she already knew the answer. I didn't mention Daniel, or the savings account that was slowly growing. We kept the conversation right at the boundary. I allowed not warm, but not cold. I left the cafe just before 5 p.m. She didn't ask for a hug. I didn't extend a hand. We just looked at each other and nodded. No promises were made. A month later, Daniel proposed. No crowd, no fanfare. He took me to the spot where we once walked along Sloane Lake on a September morning, when I was still torn about canceling payments. He pulled out a slim ring, nothing flashy, but the stone shone like an honest vow. I don't want to keep you, he said. I just want to build with you. I nodded. No cheers. Just my heartbeat, steady, no longer stumbling. We started house hunting. Nothing too big. Just a wide kitchen, south-facing windows, and a small balcony for growing mint. I stayed in touch with Mom through brief texts and scattered calls. We met in public spaces, never returned to anywhere that used to be the old home. Aunt Ruth told me that Emily and Jeremy had separated. Jeremy moved back in with his parents in Arizona. Emily was renting a temporary apartment in Boulder. She'd been unemployed for nearly 6 months, cycling through online courses, and once sent me an email with no message, just a subject line. Are you satisfied now? I didn't open it. I've learned not to brace myself for every ripple they send my way. Not because I don't feel anything, but because I don't want to pour any more of my life into things I can't change. By the end of the month, we placed a deposit on a small house at the corner of Aspen and Sheridan. Olive-painted front door, vines crawling up the stone wall, and a pale purple bougainvillea trellis on the side. I hung a little wooden sign just inside the entryway. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just has to be real. While unpacking, I opened an old cardboard box. Inside were my diploma, high school awards, and a handwritten letter from my grandparents when I first left home for college. I reread them, then placed them in the drawer of my new desk. That afternoon, as sunlight tilted through the kitchen window, Daniel placed a hand on my back. How do you feel? I looked around. The chairs weren't assembled yet. The books were still in boxes, but nothing inside me felt missing. It's enough, I said. Enough to begin from a place where no one owes anyone. No one controls anyone. No one's a backup plan. The house smelled of fresh wood, a hint of cinnamon in the air, and soft jazz playing in the background. No apologies left hanging. No burdens expected. Just life shaping itself by my own hand. Layla's story is proof that family ties should never be a shield for exploitation or manipulation. After years of emotional and financial sacrifice to keep a home that no longer loved her back, she found the courage to walk away, draw boundaries, and build something new. Though she was once treated as the outsider in her own family, Layla reclaimed her worth by refusing to keep carrying unconditional weight. True happiness began when she chose herself over familiar silence. What do you think of Layla's decision? Was she too harsh, or was this exactly what she needed to protect herself? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and life.